and welcome to Saw's Recap. Today we are going to be doing something a little different. We're going to be heading over to the practice range and I'm going to be doing a weapon roundup instead of one video per weapon, because I find that sometimes I don't have a lot to say about a lot of weapons. So I'm going to grab just a few of them that I don't really have a lot to say on, and a couple I do, and we're just going to go at it. Keep in mind, for the weapon roundup series, I don't look at the metadata. I look at the weapon in question and see if I would use it, assuming everything works in the world, although I will be pointing out things that IRL would not work. So today we have, of course, the new girl, Laurie. She's going to be on the list. Side note, I've actually been having a lot of fun playing as her. She's kind of become my healer. Did not think that would happen, but it did. So, we'll go Laurie, we'll go Soldier, we'll go, fuck it, why not, Reinhardt and Reaper, and we might throw Bastion in. Now, for this review, I will be using skins that are either from Overwatch 1 or 2. So, for example, I would use this skin since this is the Overwatch 1 skin, or I may use this skin since it's the Overwatch 2 skin. Functionality of his weapon actually doesn't really change that much with most of his skins. Neither does his. Bastion's actually does matter. I will be specifically using the New Age Overwatch 2 skin. Reinhardt does not matter what skin you use. Rocket melee weapon is still a rocket melee weapon. So let's start off with a Laurie. So in case you don't know how she works, we're gonna just go over the basics here. She has her healing pylon, which I'm not going to comment on, except that it is indeed something that I wish existed. It does seem like it would be useful. That was a terrible placement from me. She also can push enemies off of maps and stuff like that.
Get out of my sight.
And finally, we come to her actual primary weapon that she carries to battle, is her solar rifle sword. So let's just take a look at what it does. If you hold L2 on console or the left trigger, the fins fold in and you get a healing beam that you have to let recharge after about 5 seconds or so of concentrated healing. And then holding your primary fire, you get your solar shot, which...
That's how it's done.
I'm going to come at this from the condensed plasma angle, because plasma seems to be something that they definitely use a lot here in the Overwatch IP. One, I do think this would be a very interesting weapon, because it's the fins of the rails are also bladed, so she can swing it like a sword almost. She doesn't quite swing like a sword, and her weapon is, let's see, this is the 20-meter mark. That did a lot of damage actually. So we have quite the range, although I would suspect damage fall off is apparent. Let's just see if we can crack this shield. Realistically, you would not be doing this. Yeah. Now, it is coming, even though, so I'm going to take a wild guess that this is actually semi-automatic and not automatic. And the reason why is because it doesn't seem like she would... You as the player, you don't have to hold down the trigger. Or you don't have to keep pulling the trigger. She also does have her ult. We'll get to that in a minute, but I'm just going to come at this from a kind of a single shot review basis, like it's semi-auto, because I don't see the point in making a weapon like this fully automatic when you could just have it basically be like the beam. I also don't really get the point because it looks like the fin, not only did the fin slide in, but the weapon itself kind of gets a little thinner. Maybe that's just how it has to heal. And when she is running around, it's kind of a deceptively simple kit. So let's grab our boy Reaper here. You will be our test dummy since you have 250 HP, and I like that number. And her solar shot, she overcharges her weapon. And then she can blow something up. Now, the time delay doesn't make sense, but this actually does kind of work. I mean, plasma and fictional shit, you already know it's going to be hard for me to really guess if it would work. I am not an engineer. But it doesn't look like she's really... you know... This weapon's alright. I don't see anything too majorly offensive about it. It's so sci-fi that you can't say if it would work or not. I can say that there's a lot of moving parts, and I'm not sure I would want this to be in the field just because, I mean, oh lord, the amount of stuff that could break. It just, looking at that, it's all very interesting to look at when you're watching the weapon fire. But you have a charge meter, and it doesn't really tell you much. Like, I wish this display did a little more for you. It does tell you pretty accurately how well your healing is doing, though. Now, like that. So let's move on to Soldier. Of course, everybody knows Soldier 76.
Needs a cause.
He has a plasma rifle with helix rockets, and it kind of has this, it looks like it ejects what I would say is like an old battery, and he puts like a fresh one in, which would make sense if it's using the energy to make plasma shots. This one's clearly full automatic. This would, in this world, would be a fantastic weapon to use. Given your helix rockets, that would give you that. Wow, that was.
I'm on fire.
That was terrible. But helix rockets give you some, I would say, some anti-armor capability, but they don't really seem to do that much, actually, which is kind of funny.
That warms the bones.
Now, when Soldier gets his ult, of course, we all know what his ult is. It is the aimbot.
I've got you in my sights.
Now, this, my only question is, why isn't this literally being, why isn't your aimbot being given literally to everybody on a battlefield? Because that is such a useful tool. Now, of course, the gameplay reason is then pretty much everybody would be just better versions of Soldier 76, because they would have their own kit on top of his toy. The one thing I will say that I find very interesting is that it's a top-loading rifle. There seems to be, again, a lot of moving parts, but it's not as bad as Alari. Nowhere near. I will say sighting looks terrible. I don't think you could really aim this weapon very effectively. So it would very much be kind of a spray and pray. And it seems to not like long bursts of continuous fire. It sounds like it gets a little worn. Now, just watching him reload, it's a very simple yet very effective reload. It pulls back on the top rear quarter here where you see that kind of like LCD screen, and it pulls back and it just lets him dump a new battery in, basically.
Just like old times.
And of course, being very
affirmative,
being that he pretty much has a very good primary. It's very balanced. I do really like it. I just don't actually like the character. Let's talk a little bit about the rest of his toys. I tend to include other kits such as grenades and stuff. So his healing, he calls it his bionic healing. It's a little field that gives you a pretty good range of healing. If I go over here and take a little bit of damage. These guys. So we've taken some pretty good damage here. We're gonna come over here, pop our healing. It does give you, like, it took me back from 40 to 200, so you can actually get some pretty good healing off on it, and then you can do a lot of damage with this very quickly. If you're accurate with these helix rockets, you can definitely start racking up kills. Now let's head over. Let's talk about my buddy Reinhardt. So Reinhardt comes from the German Crusaders, and he uses a goddamn rocket hammer. He is a brawler through and through. He can do this fire strike. It looks like it's using some of the fuel from the hammer to send a blast of fire at a target. If he wants, he can also use the rocket engine on his back to charge an enemy into a wall.
Can you feel the heat?
And then, of course, his entire kit is just based off of being a tank, because, well, he is. So he just can do that, which I really like. Unfortunately, well, okay, both fortunately and unfortunately,
I'm feeling the burn.
our boy Reinhardt has a very simple weapon.
End of the line.
And the reason why I say both fortunately and unfortunately is because he...
Stop me, Raven Slayer.
So let's see. That he just wipes the floor with enemies when it comes to close range. He does a lot of damage.
Feel like a new man.
Now, I will say part of the thing that I don't like about Reinhardt is he's slow, but it makes sense that he's slow. He's wearing this huge exoskeleton of armor. And he just earth shatters. And when he earth shatters, he uses the rocket hammer pulling the trigger and slams it into his target or the ground to stun targets in front of him. Very effective, not necessarily the most realistic, but what is around here. So we are going to move on to our last review. I know this is a short video. This is why I did it this way. We're used to 40-minute videos here on Sarge's Recap, and this will be hitting about 25 or so.
Escape death.
So Reaper, it doesn't matter what the weapon skin looks like. So let's go over to Jack for Reaper. He doesn't actually reload his shotgun.
Death stops for no one.
Side note, he has just 2 pistol grip, short, basically short little, looks like they each carry 4 shots since he has 8.
You look bad, Jack.
Now, his kit is more
A dark step.
ethereal, we'll say. So I won't be commenting on his other abilities. But there's one that everybody knows. You know it. You love it. It's indeed your boy, the Death Blossom. How many Ally Reapers are going to Angry Beyblade their way through a team? The question is all of them. Or the answer is all of them. Now, here's my main problem with Reaper. Aside from obviously he couldn't carry enough shotguns to fulfill a mission, is he typically is seen to have large caliber shotguns such as 10 gauge rounds on his person. And there's no way these are 10 gauge. These are, I would say they're more of maybe 14 to 20 gauge. If you wanted to make sure that they were small enough that someone could actually one-hand them, but they're probably 12 gauge. They definitely sound more like a 12, maybe a 10 gauge, but 12 gauges can be pretty spicy with short barrels, and these definitely qualify. He tends to be using a style of, it would seem, buckshot. I don't want to say birdshot because, yeah, this is definitely a buckshot. So, what I think would be cool is if he could change out his shells.
Marked by death.
I need you to calm down, Reaper. So, and the reason why I say I think that would be cool is because imagine you're running up against, like, say, the shield bot, and say I could switch one of my shotguns to fire slugs, which would do more damage, but it has a lot more recoil. Or I could switch to birdshot that would pepper a wider range if I have multiple targets, but it does less damage. You know, just standard stuff. That's just what I'm thinking off the top of my head. Shotguns are an incredibly versatile weapon, especially on a battlefield. These guys, Reaper 100% would be in I would imagine with his self-healing. Pardon me. With his self-healing, he'd probably be front in his stack and clearing any room because he's your boy for that. Like, I come around here.
Death ignited.
Even this guy with the shield, you know, I can shoot through him pretty well. And then if let's say I really want to, let's just shadow step.
Beware the shadows.
I can wraith. And then just sit here and do that. Now, here's the downside, is no character in Overwatch has a feasible weapon. I think one of the better ones is Soldier 76. However, just because, let's do your boy Bastion. Bastion is the Second Amendment, so he has his grenade. That actually makes the least sense. We'll get to that in a minute. He has his minigun, which would not want to get in front of. And then, of course, I fall off of the building because I'm an idiot. I was trying to be cool and back up. His primary fire. Now, here's the thing. I do not like how it loads. Oh, that's cool. You can shoot the icicles off. I didn't know that. Because it throws this box in. Now, it could work. It would just be, again, pretty complicated. But it does kind of make sense because it would be also be the easiest way to have a robot reload. Robots tend to have trouble reloading magazines because, you know, even if you give them hands, it's really hard to make hands dexterous enough to actually reload a magazine. So it's just kind of funny that they chose to do that because they gave him hands. Now, his other thing is he has, of course, his artillery strike, which actually this makes a lot of sense to me. Bastion is a war machine that was made by the Omnics to fight in the war. So him having a very wide range of weapons makes total sense. Now, his turret form, or his tank, his assault configuration, that's about what I expect. That's probably a 308. Because that sounds pretty meaty in the real M384D minigun, which is no doubt what... That also sounds like 308, and I'd be willing to bet it is, just because he probably doesn't have like two separate ammunition styles he uses. And it has a pretty decent fire rate, but it does also have some pretty nice accuracy on it. You can definitely peek and do all that in game, and a real life Bastion unit would not need to aim. So there is no aiming apparatus that you can see on the weapon. There is a front sight-esque thing, but that's not really a front sight. Now, the one thing I will show off here is that you can actually change your ally bots over here. So these guys are now tank bots. And these guys are now rocket bots. And again, just Bastion is if you can make a combat unit like Bastion, I would make just about 1,000 of them and send them into a concentrated area just to kind of hold down the line, because they would be insanely good at doing that. They would actually be pretty poor offensive units though, because they move fairly slow. They're fairly large targets, like if we come over here. This is a pretty good sized boy. This is a pretty big boy here. You can definitely see he has his right arm as a gun, so he only has his left hand, and he has everything else on his back. He does look like he has some armor up here, and I'm talking about Bastion a little differently because he's a combat robot, so he's technically, all of him is technically the weapon. He looks like he has a little bit of armor up here, but things are looking pretty exposed in that mid-range. Of course, the game doesn't care. That being said, you can easily cut a Bastion in half if you are one. I wanted to see if that would work. So anyway, that's my little rant. Thank you, and I will see you on the next